Hey everyone, welcome back to another Wednesday evening with the Shower Door Professionals. Um, really glad to have you. See a couple faces here I haven't seen in a couple weeks, so it's always nice to see some of the old timers come back. Not that you're old or anything, but you know what I mean. And even some new people showing up on the call. So it's going to be a fun evening. So if you are in the Facebook group and you're there, um, on the Facebook page watching, you can do that. Or you can just go ahead and click on the link and come on in. After we thoroughly screen you and get a blood sample, we'll let you on into the call. Yeah, so really excited to to chat with you guys and see what you've got to say. Tonight we're talking a little bit about business growth and scaling. So we want to talk a little bit about strategies for growing and scaling your business. This could mean, expanding into new markets or just managing rapid growth. I love it when that happens. You have like these big growth spurts, and it's like sometimes you don't know how to manage them. So I think we've got some people on the call who probably have experience with all of this stuff. Um, Me, not so much, I've never done any really rapid growth, but I've heard about it. I've seen it happen. But growth, he, radical rapid growth could just be going from like working by yourself to having a helper, that's like 100% growth, or going from that to hiring a crew, that's 100% growth, and those first initial spurts of putting on help, those are a big deal and really harder to manage in a lot of ways than once you get down, you've got a bigger crew and you're putting on, a few guys at a time. So anyway, all that being said, I want to go ahead and see who wants to jump in here and talk about this a little bit. Anybody here experienced some growth or looking at putting on some people or adding a truck or something like that?
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I could definitely add to that, but if you don't mind adding me, can you connect me? I'm trying to connect with my computer. It's
Oh,
named
okay.
it's named Saul. Yeah,
Okay.
there we go. I'm gonna hang up on this one sec.
Got
But
it.
Right,
Just
cool.
let you in. Didn't recognize it. Sorry.
No problem. All right. That's Saul.
yeah,
Hey,
oh,
Saul,
here.
this is your first time on the call, huh? I think you muted yourself.
No, yeah, no. So I Saul's my English name. Everyone calls me Saul. Sholey's my real name. That's what I was just on. So we just talked.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I knew that, but still, this you're still your first time on the call, right?
Yeah, so I've been trying to get on for a while now, and my kid plays travel hockey, and I usually, for a year on Wednesdays are horrible because we always have practice at the time. So finally, the season's over, and I'm excited to be on.
Awesome. It was cool to have you on. Thanks for
Yeah,
joining
thank
us.
you.
So, you
Where are
want
you
to weigh
from,
in on this
Sean?
a little bit? Oh, wait. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in Nashville.
You're in Nashville. Okay.
Yeah, yep. And to add to Chris, I'm kind of to what Chris was bringing up. I'm kind of going through a hump right now, so it's actually perfect you bring that up. January, February, March was really slow. March was crazy, and now it's just exploded. I have to buy another. I have to get another truck and another team, both are which are that's always that's always a burden. And my estimator told me today, he's like, "Hey, you just tell me when it's time to stop selling and I'll do it." And I said, "Don't ever stop selling, keep selling, and I'll figure the rest out."
That's
So,
right.
um, I did have a call with Indeed today. I usually never take calls from Indeed, but I needed some advice because I need to find someone, and they had some really good advice. So yeah, it's I'm in a growth spurt. I'm going from 1.5 because I've got three installers to now I'll probably need 4 to 5.
Okay.
So just an interesting dynamic.
Excellent. Yeah. So what's that experience like for you right now?
I mean, it's stressful, right? Because you got to balance, all the money. I actually talked with Shannon about this last year during Glass Build. Is the challenge. I was prepping for this. I thought this would happen, and knock on wood, it finally has. But you gotta front load all the expenses, right? You gotta front load the crew, and you gotta front load the truck, and you gotta front load all the extra tools and everything that it takes. Um, in hopes that all that business is coming. Now, I always say hope is not a strategy, right? So, the strategy has been there to build, but it's I think I haven't been through enough of this. I'm 2.5 years in, 2 years in maybe, and so the idea has been, or I've thought that now that most of the overhead is covered, hopefully the second, third crew is what really starts to bring in the profit. Because now everything has been overhead up until now, right? Like typical operating expenses. So I think maybe people can have input on this, but I think once you get that second, third crew is when there's profit is start to be seen in the with the business.
Yeah.
Agree? Disagree?
Were you not seeing profit before that?
Well, a big part of my expenses are my marketing, my overhead in terms of my rent, and then my labor, right? And so the margins haven't been super strong.
Mhm.
And um, I moved everyone from a 1099 to W-2 because I had to keep. It was trouble keeping guys here in this market. So then I had to take on workman's comp, and then I had to take on all this other overhead. Employer taxes now I had to take on, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean margins were thin.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but there's no other. So to what Shannon and I were talking about at Glassville, it's like, okay, now you just have to kind of bite the bullet and invest in that next crew because that's where the ideally the profit is starting to come in because now your overhead's covered, the rest should be gravy in theory.
There's a
Would you
lot,
agree?
there's a lot more to it. Yes, in a ways, but there's a lot more to it. Do you, because there's more management, there's more chances of mistakes, especially as you get a new crew.
Right.
Um, may need more advertising to bring in more business, might need office staff to start doing the billing unless you do it round the clock. Because I remember doing that when I started.
Yeah.
I did everything, did estimates. Then the guys came back and I did all the bookkeeping.
Yeah.
There's a lot. And the bigger you go, the more compliance issues there are. When
Yeah.
you get over 10, there's a whole nother level of compliance issues. And as you grow bigger and bigger and bigger,
Mhm.
all those factors come in.
Mhm.
But I will
When you get
say,
over 10 what?
I don't know if you have your processes written down, because the only way to really scale efficiently as you go from 3 guys to 5 guys to 7 guys is to make sure you have written procedures down for everything. That's the only way to scale because you're going to find yourself with 15, 20 guys and they're running in every direction possible and it's going to be unmanageable. So if you can manage it easily with one or two with a good set of procedures and you do everything the same way, then it's easier as you grow. And then you try and grow from within. So you start with a good crew that both usually have a lead and a helper. I don't know if you send guys out individually or as a team. I always do it as a team. And then the helper gets enough experience where you start then splitting it and you're getting two new helpers and that helper becomes a lead, and do it that way. So you always have an experienced guy. If you just hire guys and expect them to put it in for you, you're going to be pulling your hair out.
Sure. When you say procedures, can you give me an example?
Well, everything from how you measure, how
Okay.
you talk to customers, how you log stuff in and keep track of your customers and keep track of things, how you install. just because one guy installs a door and panel one way doesn't mean everyone's going to do it that same way.
Right.
Do you have a process like if you're using wall mount hinges, are you always 6 inches down and 6 inches up on your hinge, on your center of your hinge notch, or does it vary? Do you have a set procedure of where you put your clamps, where you put your, how many screws you need when you're drilling in your U channel based on a certain length? Um, God, it goes into what's your procedure when the guys leave the shop? Are they calling the customer on the way there to make sure they're there and they have access? Or are you calling the customer a day before to confirm your appointment and stop those callbacks? How do you handle callbacks? And there's a lot of procedures that go into it.
There
And it's
are.
not that you can't run your business and grow, you can. But you're going to find yourself, if you don't do it now when it's easy, it's harder later on. So you're lucky that you can start early and do this.
Mhm.
So you're saying write everything down, document it, write everything down.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And there's many people on this group that maybe already have those written things that may share a template with you and you fill it out for your procedures. But your procedures may be different than Shannon's or mine or somebody else's.
Sure.
But it's however you want. What kind of caulking do you use with what kind of glass or with what kind of metals? It's got to be written. What type of screws do you use? When do you use plastic anchors? When do you use mollies? When do you use hollow wall anchors? What type of drill bits do you use in porcelain and quartz and cultured marble?
Mhm.
I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, people think, oh, you do shower drills. They have no idea
Yeah,
the intricacies of it.
that's true.
You know, people go out and use duct tape to tape the glass when they're caulking instead of painter's tape because they don't know what they don't know.
Hmm.
You know, there's guys, there's probably a lot of guys that do things different than me. I made a post today, and already getting questioned why there wasn't a clamp on a corner, as a 90-degree return. We glue them together. We don't put a top clamp on it. And it's perfectly acceptable. It's in the matter of fact, I was on the board with Shannon and Chris when we wrote the installation guide for the NGA. And that question came up, and Danny Donahue himself says, yes, it's totally acceptable.
Not to put a sleeve or to put the
Right.
90
The
clamp.
sleeve over on that corner.
So no sleeve or no clamp.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
But
That's
just
correct.
silicone instead.
Silicone at the corner. We have a clamp on the base.
Mhm.
But if you look at the picture, if you're on the Shower Door Professionals Facebook group, I posted it maybe 3 hours ago.
Mhm.
Okay.
But there's guys that swear by it and say that it's illegal. There's guys that say it's a danger hazard.
Mhm.
We've been doing it 20 years. It's not a hazard if it's done right.
That's right. I agree.
And it doesn't hurt to have it. And I'm not saying it. But if it's your procedure to do it that way, write it down. Worst thing you want to do, I mean, it's like going into McDonald's, right? If you go to McDonald's in New York or Seattle, you want to make sure you get the same thing. So as you grow your business and you get 2 locations and 3 locations, you want it to be your way. So get yourself a procedure.
Okay.
That's really big on growth. And then start managing these guys. I mean, everybody on here will tell you the stories as you start growing and managing people. Fleet tracking on your truck so you know where they are. It saves you time. Uh, they could do a service call on the way back if they're done at 2 o'clock for whatever reason. At least you know where they are and you can track it. Doesn't mean you sit there and you watch their truck all day long. That's counterproductive.
Sure.
But you know where they are. If a customer calls on their second job and say, hey, your guys aren't here yet. Well, first of all, shame on the guys for not calling them. But
Yeah.
number two, you can find out where they are. You could say, oh, yeah, they've already left. They're en route. Obviously, it's better if your procedure is that the drivers call.
Yeah.
And if it's not the driver, it's his helper. The guy that's not driving is the one that should be calling, and that should be part of the procedure.
Yeah, we have a text feature where they get an automated text message when they're on their way, but they don't, right? It's been verbal training, right? It hasn't been a procedural training, and so I think that's
Yeah.
good feedback.
Like when you
Shannon,
hire
if you
new,
happen to have a template, I would be more than I would love if you had anything or anyone really.
ours is more than a template, it's a book.
I know, but I don't want to impose. I'm just saying if there's something that can give me a basis, that would be helpful. I have the NGA guide. Which is huge. That's great.
It's a huge guide, but again, those are guidelines. You may choose not to do it exactly like that. And we were careful to say that these are guidelines, just in case something happens where an attorney grabs and say, "See, this says you must do it this way," and you didn't.
Mhm.
So we made sure that we explicitly said these are guidelines. But if you're starting to grow, and the other thing is we've talked about this. There's a guy named Greg Stoll. I don't know if he's on tonight, and he's done segments about know your numbers. And let me tell you, that's the one thing that there's a lot of good glass guys and good technicians, but they're not necessarily good business people because they don't know their numbers. They don't know what their gross margin is. They don't know their operating expenses or their margins. And those are huge. It's huge to know that because you could grow and put yourself in bankruptcy really quick
For
if you're
sure.
not selling the product for what you should to make a profit.
Yeah, that's definitely been a learning lesson.
As you grow and you see all your burden, your expenses, you're going to say, geez, maybe I've been selling my doors too cheap. And all of a sudden, this guy's selling these jobs left and right. Oh, it's great that he's got sales, but how much is he selling them for?
Mhm.
Are you making a profit on it? That's the real big thing. You got to look at your costs, know how to analyze your cost of goods sold, what your markup is, know what your burden, your payroll is. I mean, that's very, very, very important. And unfortunately, many, many business owners, not just glass guys, many business owners, they
Don't
don't know
know.
their numbers good enough. They don't know how much they have in inventory. They don't keep track of mileage on their trucks. And when you have a truck breakdown and because you didn't do an oil change because you were too busy to check, all those things happen. Rotating tires, checking your brakes.
And a lot of these are factors are not incidental just being in a glass shop. Like, I
Right.
mean, everybody has somebody answering the phone, right? So you can have a procedure for how to answer the phone. And I was talking to someone in the group. I was talking to Adrian actually. We're chatting. He was talking about, oh yeah, I was just not crazy about how the phone was getting answered. And I was telling him, I have a chiropractor that I go see, and he has this thing that he has his receptionist answer the phone. If it's Monday, they say, "It's a marvelous Monday. My name is Shannon, and I can help you." And it's like, and they all say exactly the same thing. If it's Tuesday, it's a terrific Tuesday. If it's Wednesday, it's a wonderful Wednesday. And they've got this thing down. It's a script that they say they answer the phone the exact same way every time. And it may not have to be that cheesy or whatever, but you should have a way that, a procedure for how to answer the phone, that every person answers the phone exactly the same way. And that's just a really easy place to start. It could be, how often the windows get washed, in the front of your building. It could be, how often the parking lot gets swept and how it gets swept. I mean, everything you do, there should be a procedure for. And then like, how to install shower doors. Yeah, that's a big one, and that gets intricate, but you can start with these little things. Like,
So, you know why that's so important too? Someday you're going to turn old, and it's someday you're going to want to sell that business.
mhm.
And that business is only going to be valuable to somebody if there's procedures set.
Sure.
They don't want to come in and run your business. They want to own your business.
Right.
They're going to treat it as a business. They're going to hire the people to do the manual work and you're going to manage it.
Mhm.
And it's truly how they're going to know if you have a business. Can that business operate without you? Can it operate? And that's what you should be striving for. Every business owner needs to strive for that. Build the business where it can operate without you. Yeah,
Yeah,
Robert just said it yourself. Build yourself out of the
yeah.
business. That's perfect. It's a perfect way of saying it.
Yeah, there's a book about this. It's called The E-Myth Revisited. And I think it's Gerber. Um,
Yeah, Michael Gerber. Yeah, I've read the
Michael
book.
Gerber. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
okay,
great
so you
book.
already know, man. I mean that's he lays it out just like Bill was just saying that you can build your business when you start it as though you're going to franchise it or as
Yeah,
though you're going to sell it someday, even if you don't ever plan to do it. It's going to make your business better and run better and more profitable, even if you never, even if you decide to keep it till you die.
The example, there's a great example. I don't know if you have a business called Jiffy Lube where you are,
yeah,
if you
yeah,
ever heard of
Yeah.
it.
yeah, of
But they
course.
do the same thing every single time. Now, they're no different than any other gas station that changes oil, but they have a system, a procedure, and it's done the same way, the same time, every time.
Mhm.
That's valuable.
Mhm.
That's valuable. And when you build it like that, you should get paid for that,
Absolutely right.
right? And if you're going to work all your life to get a payout at the end, you want to build something that you can sell, not just close your doors and say, made enough money. You
Mhm.
want to sell it to somebody of value and take pride in that. It's really important. All right, I'm off my soapbox.
I love it. It's great. Great advice right there.
I can piggyback on the systems comment because that's exactly what I was thinking as my main advice for anyone at any level. Before you add any new employees, check your systems, check your training, because adding new employees thinking that's going to solve the problem when your processes are all confusing is just going to add another person that's going to require your answers 2 to 3 hours a day and your attention from what you should have been doing. And the relief you thought you were going to get is not a relief because you're still doing things 10 ways. And like that process documentation, I help a lot of people do that from the very beginning because that's the most important first step, whether I'm going to build anything for them or just give them advice or just help them see why their reviews are working. Like, what's your process from when someone comes in, whatever lead generation you're taking? How do you answer them? What if they're, depending on what kind of product or what kind of customer they are, a residential contractor, what's your initial message to them? What sequence do they get in? How do they get tagged? Who do they get assigned to? uh, when you do receive a job and make a quote, what are the stages? How long somebody knows, hey, this estimate wasn't responded to? Every stage in your business, not John's, not Jimmy's, because their process is modified by how they run things and their brand and their reputation, if they even care about it. So mimicking theirs won't necessarily help you, but you sitting back and having that ideal day where you just write out what would your ideal process look like beginning to end, from new customer to paid customer to follow-up sequences, every step, every message, every person notified in between, and just map that out. And you don't have to build it at first, but knowing that gives you clarity, and having people able to step in, understanding what your whole vision is of your process. You're able to create a system behind it, create a brand, have people expect that your company parks on the curb, not in the front where they have been dripping oil stains. They wear booties or they don't. They install with these clips and they don't. They use these products and these installation. They give the customers this and that. They send those processes documented. That way, when people don't follow your expectation, you can say, "Look at how I trained you." When a lot of times I see people trying to get on customers or guys and they don't have a process down to reinforce it. When that customer calls and says your guys did this wrong, they can't back them up because there's no process to say no. We always take after pictures. We always take before pictures. That crack wasn't there on that counter, that tile. My guys wouldn't do that, so I'm going to back them up before saying customer's always right. Sometimes your guys are right, and when you don't back them up and they're right, you create a risk. So having a process allows you to back up your guys and teaching them that that's why you're doing it, not to be a tyrant, to establish a brand that can request a high quality craftsmanship bid. This is the reason you're $500 more, because you pay for this kind of reputation for these guys to uphold this image and this standard and this warranty. Like, your systems is the starting point, absolutely. And don't add people to it. You can tell them what to do without you being there.
Yeah.
That's super advice.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Mhm.
So let me tell you, this group has got a wealth of knowledge. There's guys in here with one truck, three trucks, seven trucks, and goes on.
Mhm.
We've all been through those stages. Don't ever be afraid to ask those questions. There's many people that don't ask and then get themselves in a jam. This is what
Yeah.
this venue is all about.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been looking forward to be on this for a while. And I've watched a lot of the recordings because I could never make it live. So I'm very grateful this mastermind exists. It's wonderful.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have this in our industry, you know, and I'm one of those people like, so I was like I worked in the glass business. I was a glazer. I decided, oh, I can do this myself. You know, why am I working for somebody else? You know, I'm good at this. I could do this, you know. How hard could it be? So, you know, I started my own business and realized, you know, after 10 years after starting it, I had created myself a job, you know, and now it's like I could never go on vacation. I could never, you know, because I was the business. And, you know, so then, you know, I started this group up. And then after a few years of having, you know, these people like show up to, 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 uh, to these calls and stuff, started learning all kinds of stuff that I wish I had learned, you know, back in 2005 when I got my contractor's license. I was just like, you know, way far along to kind of go back and reverse engineer everything. So if you're just like early in, you know, a couple of years into it, and you have the opportunity to really build on a good foundation at this stage, it's going to pay off like in spades later on. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I acknowledge the importance of it. Again, when you're starting out like this, it's usually it's I believe in process. I started it when I started the process of putting these processes together. The problem is when you're running all these different parts of the job, right? It's hard to find time to sit down, to put it all on a piece of
oh yeah.
paper, to really think it through, maybe to get pictures, maybe to do this, and then you got to put, did I miss something? And it's that's been a challenge. But hopefully, Robert offered to share to share a template and that will be helpful, and hopefully I can start working through it because I do acknowledge how important it is.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
give yourself time. It's gonna I mean, it takes years to get your initial processes together, and then when you do, then they're all null and void because everything's changed.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
You have to
it's
redo
gonna
them
be
all.
forever.
Exactly.
One of the things that we had probably talked about, I don't remember for sure, Shirley, but one of the things that I always went through when I was doing corporate accounting, my background for a lot of years was when we were coming out with a new product or going into a new location or starting up a new. I worked for Widmer Brothers for a while when we were starting up the new brew line. People think about this like they're at zero and then it'll take a while to go up. What I always had to remind all of our marketing people as we were going into a new area is that zero is here. You're going to go like this for a while and then you're going to go up. So that delta right there is where Bill was talking about people going out of business. Because if you start heading into all the expenses, and you go farther than you have the funds to maintain before you start heading up. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where the scary part is.
Yeah. I mean, I find some of it unavoidable, right? I mean, rent, labor, some of that is unavoidable,
Oh,
to a
it's
certain degree.
totally unavoidable. It's
Yeah.
whether or not you've
You
saved for the investment. It's an
Sure.
investment.
Right.
And then you're looking at what's the ROI, how deep are we going to go into our savings to build this up? And then how long is it going to take
Yeah.
for the profit to make up for that?
Mhm.
And if it's too long, I mean, that's it. It's an important thing to calculate. Unfortunately, you're never going to get it just right. There's so many unknowns. It's a tough one.
Mhm.
The
That's it.
second thing that I
You
was
can't
good,
predict so many things, right?
yeah. The second thing that I was going to mention is when when you're hiring employee number two, it's so much harder than employee number 20. But then there's that, and most people recognize that. But another thing that Mike and I ran into that we didn't really realize until after the fact. I ended up reading about it. There's different numbers that people talk about, but it's something like maybe 5 people that you're able to adequately manage. So you have 5 people reporting to you, you're fine. Mike and I together, when we had 10 employees, we were fine. When we started growing over 10 employees, we were having some serious growing pains and we were just feeling really overwhelmed. And it's just because we had gone to that point where we had more people than we were able to manage. And it took us kind of too long to recognize that we needed, someone else, that we needed that management level person. And it was stressful. And then I really did feel like, when we were at 15, when we were at 20, those were some levels. Other people, I think I've read that some people say like you can manage 10, but I guess it depends on the business and the people and what you're doing. But definitely watching for that when it's too much for you and you need the manager. And talk about a bunch of expense. Now, here's an admin person. I mean, hopefully that person allows the other people to grow and make money, but that's not necessarily a money-making person. So that's hard,
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by GlassGadget.com. Showcase Innovations creates tools that help shower door installers be more efficient and save time. Check out GlassGadget.com for more information.
I'm not there
Remember
yet, but
the more you train, the less you have to manage.
sure.
If you're training them well right off the bat, there's less time that you have to run back out on the job or double check on things. Train them your way off the bat.
I
Train, 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 train. Retrain. Sometimes you need to readjust your procedures. You find something better, a new tool comes out, new tile comes out. You have to do something different. That's okay. You can change that, but then retrain the people.
Okay.
What do you
Chris,
guys do? Sorry, what do you guys do when you have like we do like extremely custom work? So what do you guys do to train your people to do that stuff that is like unique, like once in a lifetime, and you get a lot of those all the time?
we rarely get once in a lifetime ones. I mean, being in business so long, I don't know if I haven't seen something yet, but usually if it's that type of a job, then the most experienced people are going to go there to measure that and lay it out. And you're going to find that also that as you grow, we found that the best salespeople were installers because they ultimately know the final product and how it should lay out. So that's our growth plan, is to have the guys from the install crew start to be a salesperson because they can sell it the best. You'll notice that a lot of your air conditioning tech guys, they were all technicians at one point before they got into sales. Rarely do we hire somebody to go directly into sales. We do it. Sometimes we need to do it, but it's also frustrating when you have a really good installer and the guy says to you he wants to advance in a company and you got nowhere else to put him other than sales, and you're going to lose a good installer. But make the best of it because they're really good salespeople. They can lay out a project and give you good, accurate dimensions most of the time.
Or you give them all those once in a lifetime jobs.
Yeah, well, that too.
That's another place to
Hey,
go.
if they can install once, it's like riding a bike. They can do it all the time. You can always pay them a bonus to go out and do this. And if it's a once in a lifetime job, you're going to charge for it. So there's money in the budget for it. Correct? Otherwise, they would have had the guy down the street do it.
That's really the solution, is you charge the right amount of money for those jobs.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Totally.
I'm wondering what you're seeing, what you're talking about,
Yeah, now
Elron,
you're
because
Well,
yeah,
there's
curious.
it seems like
you
it's
see like
mostly variations
I'm
on
gonna
cruising.
I'll post some stuff right now on the chat, but like we do like curve steam units recessed with inlays of different types of glass, printed glass. Um, I mean, I'll send some pictures so that way you know what I'm talking about. But it's stuff that everybody turns down. We're the ones to say yes, we can.
Nice. Love that. Good for you, man.
Well, if everybody's turning it down, there's an opportunity for you to make some serious money
No
there.
doubt.
And it's worth it for you or your dad or your top guy to go out and do that templating and follow it all the way through. I mean, when we get a really high-end job, Keith is out there measuring. And
Mhm.
if it's like a big staircase with bent glass, he's hiring somebody to come out and with the laser and do the templating.
Yeah, like we do our lasering ourselves, so we do all of that templating with the scanners and all
Yeah.
of that. So,
So you
but
already
yeah,
have it.
yeah, we actually got two of those.
I think Keith used that guy Redline that Chris had on
Yeah.
as a guest about a
Rodney.
year ago. Rodney. He's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah. He's the man.
He is.
It's great to have resources like that available.
It is. And that's the other thing. There are all sorts of resources available. And if it's not just through here, NGA has sources. That guy Max Perlstein knows everybody in the glass business. If there's a special part that you see and you got to get a hold of, if somebody on this chat or on this stream doesn't have it, then Max can find it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's people in the group all the time. I see Danny Donahue in the group, on a
Yeah,
pretty regular basis. And that guy, I mean, if it's shower hardware,
he
he
knows it.
knows about it.
Whether he sells it or not, he knows
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it's true. So yeah, there's a lot of people, a lot of like really, I think, heavy hitters in the industry who are on the calls or in the
Yeah.
group, and just willing to give advice and give you their 2 cents. We're opinionated, man. We'll tell you, what we think. So, and I
The
love
one
what you
thing
were.
I've talked, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah.
One thing that I've talked to other people about here and there is whether you're hiring someone who is experienced or not. And a lot of people feel like, well, if I could just hire on that experienced lead, then I'm good to go. And that would be a good thing to do. I've had the experience, and I know I talked to Greg at least about it, where we hire people that don't know anything because we'd much rather train them up our way than to try and, battle these habits. Curious if anybody has good experience and has decided that they like to hire people that are experienced and bring them in.
Mm.
I'm hiring a new lead hand well, he starts on Monday. And this guy is coming with experience. We're going to see how he comes. He's good with base shoe. He's good with architectural entrances. He's good at storefronts and he's good at showers. So this is the second guy I've hired with experience. The first one I hired, I worked with him for 20 years. So I knew we worked hand in hand. So that one was, fish in a barrel. But this one, I don't know. All the previous ones were green. So I trained them to the way we wanted, like policies and procedures. Although, as much as I love them, we're building them as we're building the plane as we fly it. So, Saul, I understand your frustration. I'm in the same boat. We're building them as we go. But this week we hired employee number 7. Next week, employee number 8 starts. So we're just kind of throw them out there. But yes, it's all the same thing. I am optimistic that in speaking with this guy, he understands what we do, what our model is. And I'm hoping with this guy, the experience correlates to what we do. He'll be supervised for the first while and given our employee handbook, trained for the first 2 weeks with someone, and we'll see how it goes. So I'll report back to you what it's like to have someone with experience.
And what area of the country are you in?
I'm up in the Great White North of Canada, like an hour west of Toronto.
The 51st state.
The 51st state. I'm closely watching the Battle of Florida on my phone right now to
I
see
thought Greenland was the
who we're
50th.
playing next.
Well, you still got to win.
Hey, I know.
I watched the game last
Curse
night.
continues.
You didn't look strong last night, dude.
No, the curse continues.
Yeah, I'm waiting to get off of this to go watch Tampa. I'm not watching on my phone.
Right. We're almost there. We're almost there.
Yeah, I noticed hiring experienced guys. All the many people they brought in experience brought so much baggage with them. Uh, they were just very optimistic about these certain people with this experience and this higher rate they gave them. But once certain people got in the mode, the way they were trained, the way they knew how to do it, the way they installed that shower, the clip, like they kind of had this attitude of you hired me because I know what I'm doing versus you hired me to combine my experience to get your expected outcome. And when you don't have those processes, you just got a guy who thinks he walks on water and you let slide because you need his experience, sometimes that can turn into a tyrant that turns good people's attitudes bad. Your workers that might be B players, but they're awesome. You need seven. LeBron needs other guys on his team that aren't him. You know, this supporting players aren't always bad just because they can't be the most extreme. But hiring green, I saw throwing green people into processes. You still have issues, but you're able to turn them your way. They don't come with preconceived notions of how you should hire. And when you are constantly hiring and have a process for that and you're tracking them, you can kind of do your own ROI reporting, just like you with Google Ads or something. Have a pipeline where you track applicants and then status of where they go through and what reminders they get the day before they start, all this documentation. Because I noticed as we scaled and hired more people, HR and managers and office people had to stop what they were doing to watch this person fill out paperwork for hours, get things that could have been handled beforehand, could have been sent to them as a reminder the day before to bring, could have been sent to them a week before as here's all this paperwork and documentation. So when they start on your company Monday, they start working and get in the truck, not spend half the day pulling away your assistant's attention so they can go through a process you're going to have to go through 10, 20 more times if you're going to scale and hire. Like simplify that stuff too when you talk about building processes and automations. What's your hiring process like through it and tracking for these guys? So one month in, you're checking in with them. One weekend, you have a notification that goes out that for the team lead to get report back to you. Are they worth their salt? How are they going? So you can get these problem people out of your system earlier in case these pre-planned and preset reminders you have tell you at month 3 this is when you were going to go to probationary talks. I've noticed when we don't have these processes in place, we spin around and it's been 7 months and the guy wasn't good from day one, but we just haven't had time to fire him and find someone else. So before you, yeah, that's my advice on that. Green people aren't bad, experienced people aren't bad. Make sure you have some kind of processes on them to track them because I've seen a lot of and talked to a lot of people that have leaned towards green a lot more because of how much problems they have with experienced people.
Yep. Yep. There's pros and cons, to everything. And people have different experiences with different people for sure.
Yeah, Rob, you're talking about spending all this time on people, and we've talked quite a bit internally in our company. I spend probably half a day with people on their first day, just going over the doing orientation, going over the employee manual. I give the initial tour. I do all of that stuff, and my husband at one point, he's like, why don't you just assign that to someone? And I'm like, no, this is like one of the most important parts of my job. If this person doesn't, hear from me, hear from Mike, though Mike has no interest in doing that, exactly what our company is about and how to fit in here, then we haven't started them the right way. And it's really irritating when that person then lasts, 3 days and they're a no-show on day 4 or something ridiculous, makes me crazy. But I mean, I think the cost benefits there. So that's the other thing, is trying to figure out what's what's the most important thing and when does it come up, and that, like you were alluding to, what is that startup process? What does the first day look like, the first week, the first month, the first 3 months? That's an important part of it too.
Absolutely. When they come and go, you want to do all this stuff, but then when they turn right out the door, you're like, oh, it makes you want to, the next guy that starts, be like, just hop in the truck. Like, yeah, that's where it can get frustrating. You don't have that and you deal with that, but that is expected, and that's why we try to build processes and help people build. How do you alleviate yourself from that, but still get the quality expectation that you want from them, right? They need to know what you're about. They need to be paired with guys who represent your brand and say, we do things this way, not that leave the office and say, yeah, man, they say to do it like this, but do it like this, it's faster. Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
got to get ahead of that, or guys are being trained wrong by your experienced guy just because he's can install 4 in a day instead of 3. It doesn't matter. That wrong attitude can crush you long term.
Yeah, I like what Sam just posted in the chat. He's talking about how good employees typically aren't looking for, some other job. They're looking for a good place to be at. And I think probably Bill could speak to this. I think that if you are providing like great training and people are well trained and know what's expected of them on the job, they're less likely to leave. I believe that. And I think it's counterintuitive. We think that if we make demands of people, we're going to chase them off. But the truth is, people want you to expect a lot from them. I mean, the kind of people you want working for you certainly do. They want high standards to live up to. And if you've got like really clear procedures, it makes the job really easy, even if those standards are high. Because it's like, okay, well, this is what I need to do. I need to come in, this is what they're going to expect. And if I don't do this, they're not going to be happy. And a person like that isn't looking for someplace else to go. They realize they found a good job, you know. And Bill, I mean, has that been your experience?
Absolutely, it is. Because when we started, same thing. We were putting guys out in the field that weren't trained and expecting things from them that it was our fault. We didn't know it at the time, but we know now. Anything that goes wrong, it's the owner's fault. It really is. And once you train them, they feel more confident. They do a better job. They react better with customers. They're not so nervous when a customer's over their shoulder. Actually, they turn it into an opportunity to have a discussion. And the more discussion you have with a customer, the better off it is. They're not going to be as nitpicky.
Mhm.
It translates so quickly, like everything else. You build that confidence in them. We do testing and retesting, everything on math, just so that we understand that they know fractions.
Mhm.
So if the lead says go take 3/16 off of this, we know that they know how to do that. Um, they can double check the glass measurement to make sure the glass was made what was ordered. There's just so many things to it. But the more training, that tells the employee that the company really cares about them. They want them to succeed. You hear it all the time. We want to give you all the tools to succeed, and then they don't do it. So you have to do
Yeah, but they
everything
want
you
to.
can. Yes, you have to do everything you possibly can. Now, not 100% of them work out. Some of them just aren't built for it,
Mhm.
or they just can't do it, or they have a different strength, and this one's not their strength. And then you move on, or you find a different place in the company for them.
Yeah, right.
And
Maybe
that
sales, right?
it may be sales, it may be the shop, it may be easy care coding or staging the jobs or doing inventory or doing receiving, whatever it is. Maybe it's marketing. Maybe they're just really good on a computer and can do graphic design.
Yeah.
When I only had 3 employees or 5 employees, marketing was the last thing on my mind.
Mhm.
So was HR and everything else. But,
Right.
you had to do all that by yourself.
A couple of
I
things
think,
I thought of when you're talking too is like having your installer be able to draw a shower. Because if
oh,
they go out and there's something wrong, like
mm-hmm.
maybe whoever laid it out missed something, and something needed to be notched, something needed to be raked, something needed to be whatever, and it just got missed. It happens.
Yep.
That installer needs to be able to draw you a picture of what it takes to fix it.
Yep.
That's super important. Not to just come back, with some kind of a sketch of like, well, there's this dimension here and this dimension there. Yeah, but what's out? Oh, that's not helpful.
Not at all.
You
Not at
know,
all.
a
The
saying
one
I
last,
heard, a saying I heard once that I thought was like brilliant was this guy told me that we say, people rise to the occasion, but people don't rise to the occasion. They sink to the level of their training.
that's good. That's good. It's
Yep.
true too. It's very true. The other thing that I would tell them as you're growing, whatever truck you get, stick with it and use identical trucks with identical setups. So when a truck goes in for service and you put those guys into another truck, they know where every single part is and it's identical. I said this before. When I started a long time ago, I was hiring firefighters that drove the ambulance. And they told me every ambulance in their department was set up identical. Because when time matters, they need to know where everything is.
Mm,
Every last screw, razor blade, tuba caulk, every hinge, set them up identical. When you
brilliant.
Hey,
have
Phil,
15 trucks, it makes it a lot easier.
are all your glass racks outside of your trucks or are they on the inside?
No, everything's on the inside except we have one truck with an outside rack for extremely large pieces that can't fit inside the trucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
You
mean,
do
if
that
I've got a
for,
monster piece, also we do manufacturing also, so our delivery trucks from D3 are monster trucks. So if we have a really big one, then we would send the manufacturing truck.
and you
But
do everything on the inside just because of weather or damage.
a lot of reasons. Damage is one. Driving down the street, I don't necessarily need my competitors to know how many jobs you got going on. With the labels showing. I don't want labels blowing off the glass when you're driving out there and you get jobs mixed up. These are all things that I've run across in the past. You know, Up north it was bad with snow and sand kicking up with the snow and scratching the glass.
Yeah.
We don't have that in Florida, but we put everything inside the truck that we can.
Okay.
Yeah,
If you're doing shower doors primarily, you should be able to fit everything inside of a van, a big van. I mean,
yeah,
there's some exceptions, of course, but for the most part, you can get a lot of
yeah.
shower doors in a,
Shower doors, railings, wine
yeah,
closets, most of that, most of the time.
yeah,
You're going to have the rare occasion. You
yeah,
may have a rare occasion, just ask your supplier to do a job site delivery because it's so big.
exactly. Yeah, that's a great option.
Yeah, I need to start. I tend to have that issue just mirrors. I get some larger mirror requests, which I hate mirrors now. But speaking of showers, so are a lot of now that I'm really getting busy and I have to make a decision on whether to continue to do semi-frameless or framed showers. What's the take here on this? I mean, are a lot of you still doing framed or semi, or everyone's doing just frameless?
I think a lot of us are, yeah, I think a lot of us have let go of the framed things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no,
Not that
no,
there's not a market for it, but you know,
well, there's no
business
margin
wise,
for it.
business wise, what are you
Yeah.
charging for a framed door? If it makes sense, then do it. But we couldn't charge enough to justify it.
Yeah.
But
The only,
what about builders who want that option for, if you're doing those spec homes?
That's a business decision that you got to make.
We're still doing them, but we're still making the same margin on a frame door as we are a frameless door. We're still marking it up the same amount, and the cost of the frame ones has almost gotten to be very similar to a frameless one. Like by the time you weigh it out, it's like it's worth it to just do the frameless at this point, which is one of the reasons why it's getting faded out for us.
Yeah.
So it's the cost of all the materials for a frame door.
And it takes longer to
Yeah,
install
it
a
takes
frame
long.
than
Well,
wood.
that's why I say,
Yeah.
yeah, it's horrible
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
You know,
More scratches,
So
more parts, everything.
we still do framed, well, semi-frameless. Also, we still do mirrors. We don't like to go out to the coast, but we will. And every one of our employees knows that we're going to ask, who's it for? Because when they say, will we do this? Who's it for? We do 80% of our work for contractors, and there's no way that I'm going to tell my contractor to call another glass shop for anything.
yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. I agree, Shannon. That's my concern, right? It's like, no, we don't do framed, go get it somewhere else. Well, then you're really at a high chance of losing all that business.
Yeah, we do high end primarily. So we had a new contractor that did a bunch of ADUs. I don't know if you guys have the accessory dwelling units, little side things. And when they first started doing them, they were all rentals and they were trying to go cheap and they were doing semi-frameless in all of them. And we're going, this might not be our customer. Then they switched it up a little bit. They started having mom and dad sell their $1 million house in California, move up to the backyard in Oregon, and they wanted the nicest finishes in that tiny little space. And next thing I know, there's some pretty good work. So, I hate to turn off what could be a good thing, but if that had turned out to be just semi-frameless after semi-frameless, at some point we'd either jack them up or say, this just isn't right for us. It has to be, the kids' bath, the hall bath, in addition to a really nice primary.
Yep. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, with me, my exception to that was like sliding bypass doors, like for a tub enclosure. I mean, sometimes that's the only actual practical solution for a shower door on a tub. It's like but those things are super quick and you can really make money on those. I mean, if you charge, kind of cranked up the price, I was charging a lot for those little sliding bypass doors. I don't even want to tell
Are
you how
you
much.
are you talking about the semi-frameless ones or the
Yeah,
barn style?
yeah, like quarter-inch sliding bypass, but not
Yeah.
like the stick stall, all that. I mean, I'd stopped doing that completely because it was just like people are saying here, the materials were as much as a frameless, and then and it took longer to do. So it's like you almost had to charge them. Well, yeah, I'll do it. It's gonna be the same cost as a frameless enclosure. I mean, is that what you want? But but the exception, like I say, it was with those sliding bypass, those things like one guy could do it in an hour,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can, you can charge whatever you need to make that worthwhile. But it's everybody's got their own take. I mean, it's a case by case. It depends on, who are your customers. If you're doing work for contractors, there is a lot of work that I would do for people that I would never do. If somebody just called me cold, said, "Hey, we do this," I'd be like, "No, I don't do that." But if it was a contractor I've been working for 5 years and he asked me the same thing, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do that.
Like refitting glass that's already been.
No, no, but like cabinet glass or something, like I wouldn't
Yeah.
normally want to
Yeah.
mess with. Yeah, I'm gonna be there anyway. I'll throw some cabinet glass in for you, whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
But hey, that was a darn good call. I think we learned some stuff there. I mean, I know I did. Hey, thanks for joining us. Saul, nice meeting you. Thanks for coming on the call.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Hope to see you in the future,
For
and
sure.
be sure to tune in again next Wednesday.